Okay, so let's check the voice first. All right, mic text 1, 2, 3. Mic test 1, 2, 3. Guys, let me know it's all good. Yeah, Savan, thank you. All right. Everybody's good on my voice? Yeah, mic test 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. All right, so let me show full screen. So guys, we kicked off enterprise analysis last Sunday, right? And then we did some basic understandings on it. You know, we discussed a little bit on detail about that how analysis for a particular business segment is different and how enterprise analysis is quite different because that involves overseeing the entire enterprise could be a group of companies, they could be a larger kind of collective setup of business, yeah, which may have multiplicity of businesses. It can also be termed as some of the very initial so we were discussing on some of the initial mandated preparations that we bring in, right? And if you remember these slides, right, this was the initial part of the story. Build business opportunities after identifying them, yeah. Then we stepped into building the business architecture and then optimizing the investment path. This is the expectation from the stakeholders, from the business analyst, while he's on to the enterprise alignment, yeah. We discussed these 6 key steps which are necessary as a mainline body of the work that you claim to be doing in enterprise analysis. Yeah. And after that, so the highlight here was, guys, how do you scope? So see, one thing is clear, guys. As a business analyst, one thing you should never forget is eventually your job involves, after the so-called initial study and initial analysis and initial discussions, etc., eventually you have to scope the work. And that's the most important because nobody else is capable to scope it up the way you can. So you may be while you may be uh, responsible for creating the framework, fundamentally the boundary line of a project work is something which has to come from you, okay, and the project manager will absolutely depend on you. Now if you ask me that why the boundary line part, see, the thin line of difference between an overall piece of work and the scoped piece of work is the fine line difference between an open field and the right amount of boundaries that you're drawing for taking the work into the project. So that way, if you ask me, I will say you are a very important stakeholder in terms of drawing the boundaries of the project, because scoping is dependent on multiple things. One, what kind of processes we are looking at, what kind of technologies we are looking at, what is the depth at which we want to create changes on the client side. Yeah. So that is the scope part, but who identifies that? Obviously you identify, which means during an enterprise analysis it will be important for you to see that what pristine scope of work is something which you want to find out. Once you are able to draw that mapping with the stakeholders, then of course everything else starts related to that. For example, building a business case, it's related to that. Assessing the risk and the decision package, it's related to that. Measuring the return on investment eventually post project, but that is later. But the value for money that you may bring in based on the contract, based on the scope of work, etc., all depends on what have you chosen to be part and parcel of your project work. Okay, so this is the story behind overall, not just enterprise analysis, but also on the very critical job of business analyst to scope the part of work. Okay, see, it's important, guys, obviously scoping, because otherwise any stakeholder can walk up to you and keep saying that what they need is so and so, what they additionally need is so and so, etc. Scoping is a fine exercise. It's a fine exercise because it's the sensitivity of gauging what is needful for the client, okay, what they want to definitely get done, okay, and then separating out the wheat from the chaff. All right. So it's like bringing out the real meat behind the work which they want to get done. Yeah. That is a part and parcel of this whole thing. Okay. Fine. With a good understanding of enterprise analysis, okay, we would like to step into, some of the various models that you use for enterprise analysis. Now, I will start my discussion from the previous point only. So previous point was that you have scoped the project, that's fine. So you know the thin line of difference, what you need to do and what you don't have to do. Okay. What you need to do in the project is something which you take it in, that's fine. And then comes, guys, the regular piece of work which we have for business analysts. We use models, okay, and that's obviously not only for the aesthetic sense. Models are important because it helps on a couple of things. One, it helps you to draw, okay, it helps you to draw what is the state of the client. When I say client, guys, it incorporates everything. Their maturity, or not such a mature, not high maturity or low maturity, whatever. Their maturity index of business processes, their maturity index on their technology landscape, their maturity index on their manual versus automation part, their maturity index in terms of the user acceptability of the user interfaces, its maturity in terms of their actual interfaces, which are for inbound and outbound communication, their actual maturity on the business processes which they use to give customer service, their actual maturity on the kind of competitive products or services that they have, or what is their mechanism to keep enhancing the innovation behind that. So it's a lot. Yeah. So maturity index is one part of the story. Of course, you have to care for the other things as well, which means I can keep talking and talking and talking and keep explaining, right? But that's not a great idea. You need something to draw, and that's called the models. So models are important because they designate how good or bad is their as is state, which is the today's state. It helps you to draw a to be state. So to be, yet to be. So to be is the target state where the client wants to reach. Now, whether that reach is in terms of enhancing the maturity, it is in terms of making your processes more sturdy, it's in terms of bringing in an absolute transformation perspective on an automation paradigm, etc., etc. It could be anything, but you need to draw that. Okay, so there is a way in which we produce the, let's say process flows. So most of you would have created the process flow diagrams, right? That shows the different scenario, under that the process, under that the process steps, under that any events or any users which are executing that entire process. Now you draw a process and you call it as an as is process. We make changes to the process because for certain known business reasons that becomes your to be process. So as is on the left, to be on the right. You look at it and you can find the delta differences between them. So what came first? Obviously the as is part. What came next? Next came the differences which you wanted to make to the as is process, because you know certain pain points from the business side, and you guys do discuss that out to find out the fact that yes, there are gaps. We as a company are right now living through some gaps. We need to bridge those gaps to reach the levels of our competitors or even go beyond that. So first comes as is analysis, then comes gap analysis, and if you club as is plus gaps together, you will obviously get a to be flow. Yeah. Models help you to document the as is and the to be states. Number one. Okay. It helps you produce a clear pictorial representation of the enterprise and the processes underneath that at the required precise detailing that you want them to be. Okay. So it's an obvious output from a modeling part, right? Okay. Third thing, you remember I just said gaps. So what are those gaps? Those gaps can be called inefficiencies, these could be called redundancies, these could be called something which we don't do but the market does. And it's applicable to products, it's applicable to services, it's applicable to anything else. So those are the areas which we call gap. We analyze the same, we bring out the gap analysis. Gap analysis also can be articulated through models. Yeah. So, so basically, guys, this is models are a fantastic techniques to document the process changes that accurately reflect what the user wants to do. So, is modeling important? Yes, of course. Why? Because it's helping us to document our requirements. Is requirement your mainline job? Yes, of course it is for a business analyst. So, this is something which helps you to create that artifact, which brings forward that clear reflection that what user wants and what are his requirements. Okay. So, coming to the broad line fact, model is not just a diagram. Okay, so a diagram alone is not a model, and model is not only a diagram, both ways it is true. A model basically is a pictorial representation. Along with that, there's a text description explaining each part of the flow. So I'll tell you what, you, for example, you may have used Microsoft Visio. That's a modeling tool. You may have used for example, Aris. Aris is a very famous, and very strong modeling tool for processes. Especially, it's part and parcel of SAP. Yeah, so SAP recommends Aris as a modeling tool. Or to be honest, let's say I sit with you, I pick up a piece of paper, A4 size, and I draw a particular process. I attach with it the kind of strengths and weaknesses it has. I attach where I want to showcase that this is the part of the process which needs to undergo a change and why. If I'm able to put all that description on a whiteboard and you, let's say, take a picture of it, that's basically a model for you, right? Okay. Oh, that looks like a nice ice cream. Just let me kick the AC here. Just give me a sec. Okay, I'm back here. Okay, so the why part of the things, yeah. So does modeling make our life easy? I really think it makes the life easy. Ask me. I've been trying to use it to make my life easy for last 15 years. See, guys, it's very simple. Modeling helps us to explode the larger complexities into smaller and more manageable ones. So even though you can say the technology advances are fast, but honestly, if there is organizational roadblock, if there is human barrier, technology advancement will not take us much further. And that brings me to the golden rule which I wanted to discuss with you today, that eventually, guys, chain management, okay, is a beautiful mix of technology, process, and people. Okay, now remember this statement whenever you will further in your careers going to any clients. Open your workshop, open your discussion forum, open your talkings with the client on this note. Hey, I am a change manager. I am here to service your needs on so and so kind of projects. I principally believe that any kind of change management is a beautiful, harmonious combination of technology, people, and process. So, while I focus on technology and processes, I would solicit your support to manage the people part as well. Okay, so please use this, kind of a magic mantra, because in reality, that is the story. And then if you start going deeper, you realize that modeling is something which helps you to explode the complexity behind one, technology, two, process, because eventually those things could get complex. After, I'm not taking the people aspect right away because people aspects is a bit different from technology and process. But one of the, I mean, honestly, out of maybe 100%, 60% of your work as a business analyst is related to processes, largely either business processes, data processes, or whatever. And then which you use a modeling tool to explore that, it's obviously helpful. Yeah. So using conventional techniques, it's very difficult to deal with the organizational issues, right? Because eventually they are a very complex interface of human, social, technology, process related relationships. Think about it. I'm simplifying it for you. You walk into a user community from, let's say, a particular product company. So there are 50 users which are spread all over, right? They use the process and systems to give give services to the customers. Now these users have their own internal issues. They have a process to follow, which they can follow. Their technology keeps evolving at the user interface level, so they also have a complex ongoing situation where either the business change, so process changes, technology keeps changing all the time. Third thing is the people part, so imagine the people part has to manage the changes from constant changes from process and technology, right? And that's why we have change managers like you who effectively bring the right understanding of the processes, imbibe the technologies into the users, okay, through change management ways. And that's how the transformation journeys, which the companies, bigger companies, take very large transformation processes, okay, or journey plans. And that's where people like you really help. That is the why the need of modeling in change management, within that the business analysis being the first module. Okay. Second, what does it support? It supports the analysis and designing. So when you say I'm analyzing, the data modelings or process modelings will help to analyze it better, because through analysis you will come upon the gap analysis. Through gap analysis you will reach the to be state. So that way your as is to the to be journey is largely through modeling. That's clear. Then comes your design part. So modeling is one thing, but taking effective decisions in your gap analysis on how to bridge them, only then you will come to the to be model, right? So the to be modeling in that becomes the to be design. So you create a business architectural design which is called the to be design. So the to be design will tell the client how the same process can be done better with minimal or lesser cost, lesser effort, or with probably better preciseness, etc., etc. Okay. All right. Modeling techniques. All right. So we have been talking of this now. Let's see what they are. When I say I want to model, let's think about it. So let's say right now Anchal is a VA, right standing in middle of her project. Of course, that's the beginning of the project, and she's right now has begun 5 days that she has been with the client, and now she feels a need for modeling. When I say need for modeling, please read that as a need for more detailing, right? Because now after the initial discussion she wants to formalize, the discussions on process technologies, she wants to formalize on the user related issues and all that maturity index which I spoke about. Fair enough. But she's at the start of day 5. If she looks around, think about it, please visualize what will come to her mind in terms of visualizing and modeling. First will be organization model. She is in an organization, and it's a client organization. So she has to, while she does any process or technology changes, she has to map them to who will be the doer for that. Because eventually, once it goes live, then someone will be using that changed process. So she has to look into the organization hierarchy. Yeah, she has to look at the fact that What are those points at which business interaction takes place? So she will look at the organization as such, she'll look at the business interaction points, she'll look at the location, she'll look at the hierarchy, okay, etc. etc. So today when she goes in, she meets seven stakeholders. These are responsible to drive these gap analysis with her, help her out in the business requirements, etc. Okay, this is today's hierarchy. But as the businesses are changing, the client has already suggested the kind of a to be org structure which they will have probably 6 months down the line. So current org modeling or organizational hierarchy is different. After 6 months is going to be different. So Anchal has to care for that. Yeah, because this will somehow fit into her current planning, current execution of requirements. Because eventually, I'm not forgetting that your key task there is going to be finding the right requirements. Okay, so this is a facilitation. Modeling is a facilitation, and within that, organization modeling is to begin with. Because organization modeling is all about your stakeholders, and stakeholders are your prime interest when you first enter and you want to fix yourself. Yeah, okay, then you can go either way. If it is process is more prominent, then please come down and look at the process model. Okay, then starts the classical discussion between business analysts and stakeholders on the processes. Fair enough. So while you use modeling to draw the as is processes in detail, including all process steps till the last minute of detail, because while looking at the as is process flow chart that you will bring into the discussion room, hang it on a wall, face that to the stakeholders, and then you will ask, guys, let's be precise now, that after the initial discussion, now when we are formalizing some initial requirements, I want to be very precise on this chart paper that what exactly is going to get changed. Okay, we have discussed that why it should change. Now in order to drive discussion that how that should change should happen, I want to you to focus on the whiteboard where the chart is hanging. Okay, so that is the way in which you will bring the process models. Okay, and in that, guys, we will probably now do in detail something called functional decomposition. As the word suggests, functional, which means function as such. So there's a purchasing function, there's a sales function, there's a customer support function, etc. You're decomposing that, which means you're basically exploding that to the larger detail. So stepping into the nitty gritty of a function in order to get into the details in functional decomposition. Then, okay, I decompose the function. I know now the sub functions within the functions. Now I want to do the event and use case. So use case, I think, as once couple of weeks back we discussed, and I think just to refresh your memory, so let's say one of you, I remember taking the example, one of you, like, so anybody amongst us, right, we travel to, let's say for example, office every time, right, every day, we have a certain process, we have a certain event. Okay, so for example, we take the public transport, for example, right, so we know what designated time I have to reach the station where the metro will come in, I'm going to pick up the metro, land up somewhere, etc. It's like a usual process flow. But this process flow has a user, that is me. If I'm doing the charting of the logistics for my transportation from office to home and home to office every day. So I am the actor. In a use case, the doer is called the actor. There are events. Picking up the metro at 8:02 a.m. every morning is an event. And then, of course, there's a process in which we take step one, step two, step three, all right, and then we reach the intended destination. This is called a use case. If I say, hey, can you draw it on a A4 size piece of paper? That is will be your use case. Use, which you use every day, case, because you can't present a detailed case study. So you're thinking of giving a small, short, truncated case. That's called a use case. Okay. It, sorry, just give me a minute here. Okay, I'm back. Yeah. Sorry, my AC didn't work and I was feeling so warm. Okay. All right. So, yeah, then let's come to workflow and process flow. So, guys, a workflow. So, for example, there's an organization, we have three people, let's say, working there. Okay. So, one goes to the client, acts as a BA, okay, brings the requirements and then triggers the requirements towards, let's say, the IT team. Person number two is the IT team. He gathers those requirements, creates specifications, deploys, implements, etc. That's part. Third thing is he makes it go live in the system and then again gives a trigger to the user that the system is live with the right functionality. Okay, and you can go ahead and use it. So it's like a flow of work, right? From, I mean, technically workflow it's also called a technical object in a system, but in general layman language it's basically the flow of work. So from business analyst to the agile coach and who does the development, and from agile coach back to the user, right? So this is like a workflow. So you design workflows when you are doing the enterprise analysis in the modeling itself. Guys, workflows is typically used most commonly into creating an automation for those repetitive works which are currently manual. Okay, so I think I don't know whether we discussed this in some part of time, but during procurement discussions, we were discussing to some extent how every time an organization, so let's say a large organization, right? And let's say they are a manufacturing company, they produce, let's talk of, for example, Hyundai. So Hyundai sources thousands of parts, raw materials, or finished products from their vendors, right? Now their vendors are spread all over, and now the central headquarters of Hyundai issues those purchase orders for the vendors to supply that parts. How many parts? Where do they have to supply, and by what date they have to supply? Typical information that goes into a purchase order. Okay, so let's say currently it's all a manual part. They want to automate that. They will generate or design workflows in the system, which means Mukhraj can fill up a requisition form or a purchase order form in the system and then trigger it. It will simply go into the inbox of multiple vendors who have the capacity to supply that material. So more or less, I'm trying to solicit a quotation from them. They will again fill in their quotations and send it back to me again through the system. That automated way of sending documentation to each other. How? Because there is a template, you fill that template, you send it to someone via email. It's a very simple example of a workflow. So workflows are important mediums to speed up the work, which are more repetitive, which have designated users. It has to go from A to B, B to C, C to D. So instead of manual, probably we'll design a more automated way of making it happen in the system itself. That's the workflow. Okay. And then last but not the least, you need to design from a process modeling only the activity and relationship map. So which users, okay, have a predecessor and a successor to the kind of work that they are doing. So let's say user X has to get the prerequisite mandated pre-work from another user called Y. So the relationship or the activity that must happen between X and Y is a necessary part of your process modeling, right? So what you do is, again, guys, that's why I said that golden mantra in the beginning. Whatever you'll be doing from hence onwards with me and later with the client, it will all be a combination of process, technology, and people. So keep that point in mind. Even though when now we are discussing modeling techniques, you look at it. I'm talking functional decomposition. It's of course very process centric, but I'm also discussing activity and relationship maps, which is basically more people orientation. So what I'm saying is the orientation or the shadow of people, process, and technology will now loom large in any discussion that we or subsequently you may have with your audience. Okay. All right. After that, guys, let's go to the data part. Again, a very, very emergingly important part of the story for you to understand, because now business analysts deal more and more with data. Okay, which brings me to the point that data modelings have become sometimes so important, and a lot of requirements today are maybe not discussion oriented, they are more data oriented. Okay, which means that from a data aspect, it's necessary for you to probably learn some data modeling techniques. I'm not surprised that today I find a lot of a lot of business analysts who are pretty well versed in, let's say, R or Python or similar techniques. Yeah, the reason is that we get so much. I mean, today business analysts get so much of our data. It's not feasible to um, run the data in typical Excels. Excels are good till the time the records are about 20,000, 30,000, etc. If the Excels have 100,000 records, it's obviously not possible for us to keep analyzing the trending and other things via Excel. Okay, and that is how, guys, it's important for emerging business analysts to learn more statistical based approach, which will be necessary in the future, because the data is going to be one of the core parts of the requirement gathering process. Yeah, so anyway, so coming back to data, so data flows in terms of a logical data flow, how you can keep the systems between which the data is being triggered, right? And how do we make use of that? Eventually we'll all get into the information or communication models. Any questions till now, guys? I think there was one question for Suchitra. Oh, sorry, not here. Yeah. Ah, okay. What's the difference between the workflow and process flow? So, Suchitra and others, process flow is something which will have the all the detailings associated with the process. So those are the user of the process, the what are the process steps within a process, executable or non-executable. So some process steps are executional processes, because of which the process moves forward. Some process steps are just non-live process steps, something which only facilitates the flow of the process. They are not actual execution steps by itself. Yeah, so that in all comprehensive details, this is called process flow. Workflow is only a simplistic route planning between what, let's say, a documentation which must go from me to Suchitra, and from Suchitra it has to travel forward for its approval. So just the simple planning of the way a particular, let's say, event has to flow, that is more like a workflow. So purchase orders getting automated, which means purchase orders are going to get generated, then they're going to be sent to various individuals as per their discretionary powers of authorizing them. Yeah, so it comes to me because I can authorize within a lakh rupees, it goes to you because you can authorize that beyond a lakh of rupees. Okay, so designated movement of the flow of a data, okay, along with the right authorizations, user profiles, etc., is just a workflow. But there's nothing really, it's part of a process, right? It's one step as part of a process. I'm talking about the entire procurement model, in which the first step is purchase requisition, second step is purchase order, third step is arrival of the goods services at your location, fourth services is you know um, the vendor sending his invoice, fifth process step is you doing an invoice verification, sixth process step is paying up the vendor for his product services, etc. So that's a larger part of a overall process. That's all I call a process flow. But you are automating right now only the purchase order part, which is step number 2, which in itself has about 6 to 7 event flowing from here to there to there to here. Today it is manual, takes more time. Tomorrow we will be automating it, takes less time. So workflow typically is one small part of a larger process. Okay, so all right. And guys, then at some point of time, in a little more senior situation, you will be doing the strategy models as well. Strategy model will not be purely operational. It's the same difference what you understood at the level when I said there are operational level things, and then there are tactical level things, and then there are strategic level things. Same way, the models. Obviously, because you live in a paradigm of strategy, then obviously the work there is related to strategy, the requirements there are related to strategy, and the discussions and the orientation and the audience with you is all related to strategy. So there's one room where everything is operational, second room where everything is strategic. Similarly, the strategy models are used more when you are in the strategy room, and which is obviously more aligned to goals, its impacts, KPIs, return on investments, and so on and on. Okay, so 4 types of modelings. All right, this is a beautiful slide, guys. Let's look at the enterprise architecture framework. Now that we are discussing enterprise analysis, it's obviously important for us to look at the enterprise framework, where this is how the overall pyramid looks like. You have a certain business architecture right at the top. It basically tells us what are the external discretionary and non-discretionary standard requirements. Yeah, because again, you remember that, right? Requirements are discretionary and non-discretionary. Discretionary is which is at the discretion of stakeholders. These are normally not a critical needs. Non-discretionary are needs. So non-discretionary are basically non-compromisable. You must do that. So that is the must do requirements, non-discretionary, and then comes discretionary, which is more from a women fancy. So as you get requirements at the top level, which is the business level, it flows down. Yeah, it drives the information architecture. So your requirements, the look and the feel and the shape and the complexity and the criticality of the requirements will determine how you're going to drive your information architecture. Information architecture is all about how the right kind of information will be solicited, used, implemented, and tested. All right, which in turn prescribes the information system architecture. Obviously, I mean, if you have to design the information part of the story, you need to design first the information system architecture. Just like the way for business requirements, we have a business architecture. And when I'm talking information system architecture, information system, IS, IT, not much difference, guys. So it's all about prescribing the IT architecture, right? Because we just talked in last couple of weeks, right? That you have a business requirement, it comes in and it takes shape of an IT requirement. That was the tactical shift which you do from requirement going onwards to specification, right? Specification is the start of the IT framework. And that is how your business requirement goes from an end-to-end journey plan, right? Okay, so and when you say I'm prescribing the IT architecture, who does that? Is the IT architect in your IT team, who will look at the emerging requirements from a technology or an application landscape and determine what will be the right kind of right sized technology ecosystem or architecture which should be there for the future. So okay, so we are at architecture system, sorry, information system architecture, which in turn identifies the data architecture. Because data architecture here is going to suggest that which data needs to be migrated in, which needs to be migrated out, what is the critical data needs which we need for the to be designs, What is the data which is absolutely redundant, so we should be able to do it away at this stage of time, so that what comes in into the to be state is only the responsible part of the data. So how do you identify what goes in and what stays out? That kind of a data architecture kind of thing happens when you're able to first do the prerequisite step of information system architecture. And this whole story, guys, is going supported by a delivery system, your hardwares, your softwares, and the user community around that. So what I just did, I just ran through a top to down approach of running through a business architecture framework, sorry, the enterprise architecture framework, which involves one, business architecture, second, information architecture, third, data architecture. All right. So these are three, four things put together which help you to create the requirements at an enterprise level. All right, guys, any question on this? These slides. Okay, let's stop here. Okay, so we started this whole thing from one of the critical things obviously was the process modeling part, right? So let's start looking a little bit at the functional modeling understanding now. Functional modeling, guys, is very important because, and it's a detailed one and it's a complex one, right? So your attention is necessary here, because for functional modeling, some of the prerequisites are that you have to first give a definition, yeah, then you have to give a purpose for that, and then you have to give a perspective for the same. I think this is what we already said, that what is the definition of function modeling? As the slide says, graphical representation of a enterprise function within a defined scope. So if you want to talk about a procurement process automation from beginning to end, that fits into the detailing that you want to create from them, and that fits into the definition of a functional modeling. Yeah. Okay. Then comes the purpose. Purpose of the functional model is to obviously describe the function and the processes within. Why and how? How part is with the discovery of information needs. Why? Because your IT team will need those things. Besides, don't forget that you're sitting in an enterprise analysis box. So the purpose of functional modeling is also to identify opportunities, because that's what we do typically in an enterprise analysis. Remember what we saw 8 slides behind. So guys, if I wouldn't need you to identify new business opportunities, I rather keep you at the business analysis level only. Yeah. So the thin line difference, okay, thin line difference between business analysis and enterprise analysis. At enterprise level, I don't need you to do look only at processes. I want you to look at opportunities within those processes. So opportunities are a little puzzling. You don't find opportunities to enhance the things further only looking at the business part. You need to look at it from the way a whole ecosystem of an enterprise operates. And that operation of an enterprise is obviously from three sides, which I explained: process, technology, and people. Unless you bring them together, you won't find the right opportunities also. So that's why this definition deliberately keeps this item in purpose, because I couldn't keep the opportunity identification in the definition side, so I brought it over to the purpose side. Okay, so help identify opportunities and establish a basis for determining what should be the product and services, maybe cost, maybe scope, maybe returns, or maybe adaptability or usability, and so and so and so. Anything like that will get into the purpose part. Okay. And guys, functional modeling, as it says, is only to cater to the function. So while you do this modeling, remember, you have to keep the perspective strictly within functional modeling. Okay, and no, it's okay. We'll see some diagrams or some examples. We'll get to understand this more. I think this is talking the same thing. Uh, Flowchart, primary concept, focus areas. I think this is okay. This is more generic. We have kind of okay, this is a 30-second slide, guys. So guys, when we do functional modeling, what you see here, this square box, rectangle box, arrow, etc. This is nothing but, I think you are familiar. These are typically the representational art which you use to create a process flow. Yeah. So for example, this shape recognizes a process. It illustrates a process. Okay. This one is for data collection. So this is for data storage. So wherever you use this in your functional modeling, it symbolizes that that is more of a data capsule. This is obviously the flow of the data or material in a forward or a reverse direction. A perfect square is more like an external entity. Okay, so external entity in our case is going to be the third party vendors or technology partners or support partners, either from a technology process or hardware or any other perspectives. So you keep them in the loop, you keep them in the diagram by showcasing where the third party is going to get active, just to suggest that in overall functional flow of the things, where the third parties will become active and our recognized solicitation of doing interactions with them will become very important. That's the whole story. Okay, just have it this little small example on relationship part. This is the okay. Okay, very simple example where organization or the client is in the middle. On the left is the supplier, on the right is the customer. In this case, more straightforward process where the organization or the client is just servicing the customer via a supplier. This is more from a financial point of view. Yeah, more from finance point of view, where we have a organization or a client which has placed an order for some equity with the supplier. Okay, what is the helping or facilitation there is the market data. So using the market data for analysis, a client has placed an equity, a particular instrument of equity order with the supplier, okay, which is supplied, all right. And then basically the organization does a settlement and reconciliation over a period of time with the supplier. This thing goes further into towards the customer as a service or as a product, who in turn receives his own account statements and timely reports with which he's kept updated about the debits and the credits and everything else which is happening as a dynamic activity within his account. Yeah, so let's take this project organization as a client, like any mutual funds, selling entity, who so basically it's showing what, it's showing basically the relationship map between a supplier and a customer with an organization. I bought out the simplest of example because here I'm placing an order, getting the product supply, I'm giving it further to the customer, and I'm netting or reconciling or settling what is the financial input in between, right? So organization pays to the supplier, organization charges to the customer, and that's how the whole end-to-end things run, right? Relationship map, simple. Okay. If you look at a functional decomposition diagram, guys, this is, I think you have already understood, most of you have actually understood it, but just to give you a very broad actual functional decomposition diagram. Sorry guys, just give me a sec please. Okay. So just to show you a beautiful example, you know why is this so pretty? Because within one diagram, I'm showing you so many different process steps. And mind you, as a BA, as an enterprise analyst, you have to care for each. Now, many of you would have simply drawn this kind of a process flow or process diagram. Okay, it's nothing but exploding the a big scenario called. So scenario sits on top of process, right? One scenario can have multiple process. Here, guys, you have a scenario called selling office supplies. So there's a client or a company which sells office supplies, okay, to customers, etc. This could be anything related to office. Maybe let's call it office stationery products, for example. Yeah, it has 5 different processes under that. First, checking the status of an existing order. Second, completing that order. Third, tracking the customer. Fourth, placing a new fresh order. Fifth, changing or canceling or making edits to any placed order. Okay. Now, if you pick up any one, let's pick up the check the status of existing order. What do what does the user need to do? He needs to check that the order has been received. He needs to check that the validation or the verification of the customer has happened. He needs to verify the order as such, and then he has to notify the customer about the status of the output service that we can provide to him or her or whatever. Yeah. Now, if you see in a sequential flow, this is how the things will move. Let's say if there is already an existing order, you will check the status, it's pending for whatever reason. If you can complete that, you can, and then you will complete the order. And completion will make we accept the customer's payment. Okay, let's say through a payment gateway it happens. Then you determine the shipping method, and then you provide an estimated time of delivery and etc. Okay, typical e-com kind of an example. So, what did we do? Nothing basically. We just decomposed or segregated the various process steps under particular processes, which in turn are further under one combined scenario. Yeah. And we listed it down like this using a small modeling tool. Yeah. So what happened, guys? Eventually, functional modeling is nothing but an explosion of particular process steps under few multiple processes, which is under one or more scenario. So the bringing alive the sequential activity which happens while you execute a scenario, you get into multiple processes, you execute those processes, you get into the obvious execution of multiple process steps, you put it down in a flow in the right sequential order, you got a functional decomposition diagram going. Loud and clear, easy enough. Okay. Okay, so let's look at data modeling. Again, nothing very different from process modeling, because in essence and spirit and principle, it is the same thing, except that the process steps typically get replaced by data. So this is also creating a data model by applying data modeling descriptions and using certain techniques. Where are we coming from, guys? Remember, there are two lifelines of any process. One is the process structure. What is the process framework? That is the way where we just discussed about, on a functional decomposition. Second is the accompanying commensurate data which must flow along with it, because a process without data is frankly like somebody like any of us without the necessary clothes. Data gives meaning to the processes. Data tells the intensity of the process. Data tells us uh, the depth to which the process is critical, complex, important, etc. Data gives the peripheral structures to any process. So data is the key. More so ever now, guys, because as compared to any last times that we used to do the analysis from a business aspect, data is critically important now. In fact, a lot of times the so-called discussions, etc., that actually happen on the data modeling front. Yeah. So obviously, no wonder that in the elicitation techniques, we have things like data modeling techniques, we have data mining techniques, we have such kind of things and all that. Because today, it's many times it has happened that we go to the clients and they give us a data dump. So they say, okay guys, this is the data dump, please analyze that, please look for the patterns, please look for the trends, please look for the descriptions which you find there, and make sure that your analysis of the numbers is tailored with those events, descriptions, and so and so and so. So data is very, very important. I couldn't have stressed that more. Okay, now if I say, hey, we are combining the two things, right? We combine data and process both in order to create the right requirement. Now, obviously, I just said, right, that any process before without data is nothing. That's why we have databases. So databases in typically any IT system is very important, because that houses all the business data, transactional data, day-to-day data, from where one, you create a repository of the output of each processes in form of a transaction, and second, it is the data which is, so building a repository of data is all that what is offered to you by database as an opportunity. So data modeling is also a technique for defining the business requirements for a database. Now, if you're talking database, I have to talk the hard drives, the GBs, the RAMs, the processing speeds, and many such things as well. Yeah. And for that, typically I may have somebody in the team called system analyst. So if I'm talking about creation of databases, which could be SQL servers, which could be Oracle servers, which could be DB2, Teradata, anything, I may solicit the help of a system analyst as well. Okay, so remember one thing, eventually any data modeling is going to be part and parcel of a database. Any database is going to be part and parcel of your requirements. Any requirements of yours is going to be a part and parcel of process and data both. Hence, catering your attentions to create data requirements, data requirements using data modeling in terms of creating the right data spaces, databases is important. Okay, some of you who might be a little familiar with databases might find some of these terms quite familiar. So, in a way, guys, you can call this a data decomposition sequential process flow. Yeah. So, when either you or the system analyst or whoever is going to do a data model development, you have to cater for these things. To be honest with you guys, a very business oriented BA doesn't really do that. It's really rather rare that I have myself done a data model developments kind of thing, because it's never a small data, it's never a simple data, it's always a complex data. So frankly, for handling complex data requirements, we generally always have a system analyst in the team. Yeah, because business analysts are definitely much more dedicated and devoted and supposed to be on the business side. So simply, it's more of an activity model with the right technical environment details put into it, plus performance consideration of those technical requirements, which must go in as a KPI. Yeah. So you say, I've got 7 servers to set up. These are the databases for each, right? We are moving from SQL databases to HANA databases or SAP, for example. Okay. So what is the performance consideration that I want? You know what? My organization clocks 100,000 orders every day from my clients globally, right? Since all of them are sitting in the same central server. So you know what? I want the data processing speed to be fast, so that the speed at which my order creation activity moves globally in 24 hour cycle has to be faster than what we can, what we can imagine at this point of time. Yeah. So technical environments, performance consideration for those technical environments, that's why the two boxes are black in color. Plus, of course, your business data. So within the paradigm of a business analyst, data considerations are important. I go to a client and they say, okay, what kind of business data they have? They have product data, okay, or services data, either way, Then they have their customers data, they have their vendors data, they have their price data, they have their discounting data. They have so many kinds of data, right? Vendors data, purchase data, and so on, and financial data, etc. All that is called business data. Business data typically stays in the database. Yeah, so the repository has to anyway take care of that. So again, remember, let's not forget what are we doing. We are right now sitting in enterprise analysis. Within enterprise analysis, we are thinking of process modeling and data modeling, because they are part and parcel of the modeling techniques. Now, whereas the functional decomposition is your baby, data modeling could be someone else's baby. Because see, typically they use technologies and technical situations, in terms of a conceptual data model with respect to relationships, attributes, entities, and subtypes, and there are some integrity rules for data. Something which I'm just giving you as an FYI. Yeah, you have to just basically have a look at it, basically understand this, so that tomorrow when you're actually in a project, you know that there's someone who needs to do this part of the story as well. Yeah. And then of course there are physical data models, from table, indices, columns, triggers, etc. But that is how the data is arranged in a database. So that's an efficient management of data housed in a repository. Yeah. Okay, this is for your, just for your basic understandings. Logical and physical databases, not really that we will have relevance right now. This slide I designed just to show you that eventually for your database or interface design, you will need these inputs. You will need the inputs of a data definition, entity types, attributes, relationship, integrity rules, though it's absolutely not important for you to understand and everything on, integrity rules, entity types, attributes, etc., etc. And I don't think it's important at all. But this is just to show you that a conceptual data model is developed based on data requirements for the application that you are designing or developing. Okay, so an application, yeah, I'm creating an app. That app will be responsible to, tell my customers what is the nearest, you know, thing that whatever they are looking for. Where is the nearest location for the same? For example, just a subset of Google Maps. It's an app. So for to develop that, there will be tremendous amount of data requirements. Any such requirements where you feel and see a clear need for data related requirements, you must engage with a system analyst. Typically, they are part of your IT teams. Okay. But remember, for interface or database designs, you will need to undergo these things which you don't have to do yourself, but you have to get it done. So then this can be used as a start point for interface or database designs. Okay, so coming back to a little bit non-data discussions, which is more of our baby, right? The more of a business part of the story. So, guys, I'm just bringing open the topic called BPM, which is the business process modeling. Okay, there is something called a business process management also, but that's a separate topic altogether. So, BPM is the activity of presenting processes in an enterprise in terms of their current as is, how to be analyze them, how to improve them, and then to create a future process, which is the to be part. Okay, so between the as is and the to be is the interconnecting link of analysis and improvement, also called gap analysis. Why am I showing you this? Because you have to design an actual as is process flow and to be process flow from for all of your projects. The project that we will also do towards the end of the business analysis, where you will have to create a deliverable. I'll of course share some good artifacts and samples of the previous done work, which will give you a clear direction that what is a overall from a modeling perspective, what is that you generally create in your deliverables. Yeah. Hey guys, you know that we have a class till 5 today, yeah? So do you guys want a 5 minutes break? Just kind of a little bio break, freshening up and all that. We'll come back and then we can do it for the rest 50 minutes. Let's take a 5 minutes break and come back, yeah? I'll keep the screen open, yeah. Okay, guys, so let's come back. All right. Hey, where are 4, 5 guys gone, man? I don't see them around. Okay, so all right. Let's come back to BPM. So, guys, BPM is quite a hot topic. Okay, it's hot for the last couple of years now, almost maybe 4, 5 years. Okay, and it has gained very well grounds. Okay, and the clients or organizations truly value that. Okay, so let's get this concept very straight. Business house modeling is typically performed by business analysts who are seeking to improve process efficiency and quality. Okay, two things: you want to enhance quality and efficiency, you want to bring down the current costs, make it like a something which you talk to yourself day and night. Because henceforth, now that you are initiated into the role of a business analyst, followed by further by overall a complete change manager role, these are the key terms and terminologies which you must talk, or start using it. Okay, so enhancing process efficiency and quality, bringing down the current cost of the execution of the process. This is the basic funda of a process modeling, business process modeling. So you need to get a little bit more familiar with it. Now, process improvements identified by the process modelings may or may not require an IT involvement. I think that's what we are clear right from the beginning, when since the time we have begun on business analysis, that the output which you bring as requirements may get implemented by IT, because it needs to go into an IT system, because it's a system oriented enablement of the user. You want to capture that requirement which you did, you want to obviously change that which you did, and now the IT system is going to make that change happen in the system. Okay, so we are discussing pure IT stuff here, but there could be pure business oriented requirements, right? So, for example, your current calibration on the return of investment for three different product lines is not, let's say, even for example 20%. Now that is the problem definition of the client. So your methodology to analyze the business part, to analyze the the costs and the competitive trends and the product features and the characteristics, and it's in line with the current competitive environment. For example, these are purely business orientations which you want to do in order to do a particular process modeling. Okay, so it doesn't need an IT involvement. It's pure business oriented talk, business oriented solution, business oriented adaptability of the user, and so on and on. Yeah. Okay, so the two, different sides of business process modeling: one which eventually falls into the bucket of IT, second which doesn't. Okay, now, I mean, I can't forget the fact, guys, that I'm creating change managers out of you, right? So I have to keep that uh, you know strategic visibility on the dashboard all the time, and hence I want to relate all important processes which are doing now, for example as a business analyst, with respect to the change management part also. Because remember, in your eventual understandings, and I'm sure you'll replicate your understandings on the interview table maybe in a couple of 3, 4 months, you need to keep in mind that what you have done in this certification program from the beginning is always related to change management. Change management is like a huge umbrella. Trust me, you can find opportunities under that umbrella in today's competitive market, either as a business analyst or as an agile coach or as a project manager or as a change management analyst. So the opportunities are too pretty lot. The only thing is you should be able to replicate that your true understanding of change management, and within that how the different processes related to it get into action when you work as a change manager is important. Now, for example, we are talking business process modeling, but within that, if I want to bring the change management interlock, I will say change management programs are typically, involved to put the improved processes into practice, right? Change management is a big portfolio. You said one of the key things which I started the change management program was number one, improve the business processes and practices. Second, by bringing in more advanced form of technology, etc., from large platform vendors. And in order to do that, obviously the modelings which are fully executable and capable of those kind of simulations is something which I used for the prototypes. Now, what you see in this box is typically a comprehensive statement, it's nothing else. But it's binding together the change management, it's binding together the process, the technology partners, and modeling part. So, simple statement. I use the modeling technique because I wanted to simulate what is going to be the likely impact on our process using a third party or a large platform vendor software. So, that is more articulation in very simple terms. Okay, in more business terms, you will say what is there in the box. So, guys, the important pointer for you is please start getting familiar with the business terminology, with the industry terminology. What you share is a deliberate attempt by me to introduce you to the change management industry terminology. This is something which I talk every day. It's my regular parlance, it's my regular language. That's how I talk to my business partners, to my clients, to my associate technology vendors, everything. And the same thing I want to reflect in you in the next 3-4 months. Okay, so some of the slides are serving dual purpose. Somebody wanted to know, yeah, Suchitra. So Suchitra, you wanted to know the difference between process model and workflow. Yeah, check out. This is a workflow model. Yeah, so it's basically showcasing a workflow under under the larger topic of process model. So this is how an online order placement by the customer, right? When he submits the online order, pays through a gateway, and then the order is sent, to a particular vendor's warehouse for shipping. Shipping is scheduled by that vendor and it is sent over to the customer. Yeah. So it's a typical e-com kind of workflow. Okay. So I will call this, if you look at it from a process, I will say it's more end-to-end e-com process, but this is not e-com process. This is a very small subset of it. But this subset of it is showcasing only the triggers which flow from customer to the payment gateways on the website to the vendors which are sitting in the back end who get this trigger, who get this workflow trigger that Mr. So and so has solicited two quantities of your vases, yeah, and they need to be shipped to so and so address. The payment has been done, the instrument has been credit card, and it has been the payment gateways has been via HDFC Bank, etc. Yeah, so this kind of a info has to trigger itself in form of something called a artifact called a workflow. This is something which will go to the backend vendor and he will get this and he will ensure himself that yes, the payment has been made and now I need to just ship the quantity to the customer's address. Yeah, so small part of a process which is mostly in terms of triggers, in terms of showcasing the route planning which must happen between when the customer places an order till the time he receives an order is a typical workflow modeling. Okay, and then you wanted to know a process modeling, right? Look at this. This is more of a process modeling example. I think I talked about purchase or procurement process. This is also pretty much the same. This is basically a model for a purchasing process. Okay, and I'm not sure what RMCO stands for. RMCO purchasing process. So it must be probably reflecting a particular business aspect. It's a short form or a connotation, but never mind, I'll find it out. So guys, here if you see from the beginning. Yeah. So purchase process. Okay. You first have to complete the purchase requisition form. So your requisition is for office supply of 10,000 pens. So you fill out a purchase requisition form. It is approved, and from there it goes into a decision about what kind of a payment method we have to pay. If it is a cash, it goes via this. If it is a credit, it goes via something else. So right now we are sitting in a company, right, who's ordering 10,000 pens for itself. Yeah. So once, if it is a credit, which we have, because we have a credit policy, or it's part of the contract that we have with the vendor, then it will go to something called some another form. You fill that out, it will lead to an invoice purchase requisition. If you go for the cash part, it has a different workflow. It has a, sorry, process flow. Sorry about that, not workflow, process flow. So the cash part goes in a separate process flow, credit part goes in a separate flow, but eventually they are all coming to a basically, documentation for controllers review and approval, etc. Yeah. So I hope this clarifies your doubt on the process versus the workflow. But guys, you have to do both. You have to do both because as part of the overall modeling, from as is modeling and to be modeling, Chitra, more important is the process part, obviously, because you draw process as is flows, you draw process to be flows. So process flows are obviously more important. Workflows may or may not be used. So that's how it goes. Yeah. Okay. Again, since we are sitting in the enterprise modeling bucket, I need to bring up to the fact that, guys, you remember we mentioned on 4 or 5 slides back, we mentioned some strategy models, right? The fourth modeling, which is more about a goal, particularly a goal, or some kind of a aim or vision, etc. Now, where do you use them? You use them if you are doing some serious enterprise analysis. Okay, because strategy goals for the entire business, they are for the entire business, they are not for individual businesses. But remember, so is enterprise analysis. Even that is not for typically for individual businesses, it's for largely the overall business. And you know the reason why? Because one of the important considerations of enterprise analysis is that you identify the opportunities which exist within the enterprise, right? Now, opportunities will never be isolated to particular businesses, because in an enterprise most of the processes are intertwined with each other, they are interlocked. Yeah. And hence only during enterprise analysis, when you get a hindsight of all the processes within the enterprise, that is where you start finding the common part, and then where the interrelated part. That is why strategic goals will obviously come largely only within strategic analysis and not within business analysis, because strategic goals are related to vision of the company. You remember we did mission and vision. So from the vision part translates to objectives, and objectives translates to the value which they want to provide to the customer. Yeah. So in a way, it's a foundational basis actually of the organization, and what is its objective in a long-term perspective. Yeah, which could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years plus. Okay. So that's a strategic part of the story. There's always something called tactical goals, which are neither strategic nor operational. But what are those? These are to achieve the ambitions outlined in the strategic plans. So, guys, more often, strategies need a how to story. That this is my strategy, these are my strategic goals, this relates to accomplishment of my vision of securing a 30% margin on certain newly launched products in the next 5 years. It's a strategic goal. But very often you say, okay, how to do that? And to cater to the how part, you have to design something called tactical goals. So tactical goals obviously have to be broken down into smaller pieces which are more actionable, because that's what strategic tactical goals are. Tactical goals are responsible to achieve strategic goals. Yeah. So in a way, if the strategic part is what we need to do to reach there, tactical plans will respond to how to do this to reach there. Yeah. So strategic is what, tactical is how. And remember, in today's world, how is more important than what. I appreciate the need for strategic considerations, But the fact is, in every walk of life today, in an organization or in this industry, it is a how part which matters most. Because how controls the cost, how controls the effort, how controls the projects, how controls everything else. And then, of course, we come to the operational goals, which are basically for achieving enhanced output from a day-to-day running of typical operations plans, activities, etc., etc. And in a way, I mean, if you see, you said tactical goals are the actionable part of achieving strategic goals. And honestly, if I break down tactical goals further, I'll probably come down to nothing but my operational part of the story. Because eventually everything is on the ground. And on the ground, there's only one thing: operational goals, operational requirements, and other things. So, I mean, but that's the truth, right? I mean, you explode a larger requirement, it will break down into smaller requirements. And smaller requirements will cater to more of an operational part. So it's the same thing, guys. I mean, bigger things lead to smaller things. You need to do smaller things eventually in order to achieve the bigger things, because you need to break down everything into more meticulous detailing so as to assign tasks, activities to various people, which are eventually forming a value chain to make that product come through. Yeah. So is this clear, guys? The strategic, tactical, and operational goals. This language is very often talked when your discussions, when you have any kind of discussions on the enterprise analysis part. Okay, just some example, guys, of the three different kind of levels that we have from an either a goal or a modeling perspective. So strategic is, for example, common incentive structure design across the entire enterprise. It's a strategic part. Okay, I've got 518 processes across my customer servicing, across my vendor management, across my financial reconciliations. 518 processes. I want to rationalize all of them. What's the vision? Vision is very simple. If I try to rationalize 2 to 3 processes, I've realized over a prototype, each process rationalization gives me a 10% cost reduction. Okay. So I'm obviously looking at a large cost reduction, which will result from rationalizing all the 500 processes. Even the fact remains that rationalizing process or a project will itself take quite a bit of money or investment here. But I'm okay with it because that's a one time thing. After that, I'll have a recurring cost optimization coming from each process over the next 5, 7, 10, 15 years. So that fits into my long term plan. In order to achieve my long term plan, I, as an enterprise architect or analyst, want to do a process rationalization. So what I'll do is I'll call 10 BAs, one for procurement, one for customer service, one for technology aspects, one for something else, etc. And I'll assign them one area each. What will they do? Obviously, what you're thinking, they will go into the details of processes related to each component and then break them down further, because they want to see each process, okay, and analyze whether every step of the process which is executed in IT or without IT, is it mandatory? Is it necessary? Is it giving us a value for money? So guys, it's all for assessing every component of your process to come to the conclusion whether it is value for money, yes or no. Okay. Similarly, guys, you got lots of processes. You want to rationalize processes. You have got lots of product categories. You want to rationalize them. You really don't think that all the product categories are profitable for you. So whether some of them, let's say 50% or 20% are non-profitable, of course you need to keep some of them because they are related to the profitable products as well. So you need to keep some of the product categories, you need to just maintain because they are necessary part of the story. Right? You can't take them out because you need to showcase yourself as a comprehensive, your company which has a comprehensive product portfolio. But that doesn't stop you from engaging in enterprise analysis in form of a BA who can help you to rationalize in terms of just taking out the cost benefit of each product category after looking at the visible trends and analysis as a response to the product by the customer over the last 18 months cycle, right? So how much is customer liking that product category, and second, what is the effort on your part as a company to sustain that product category in spite of it not giving you enough of a gains? So this is the product study rationalization scope, which probably as a BA you may carry on. Yeah. Again, strategic, customer focus, value offerings. So what value do I offer as a company to my customers? Into travel business, for example. I'm a travel agency. What are the value offering? Is it only to secure their tickets on a optimum cost in a due period of time and deliver it and then make them happy? Is that only that, or the fact that travel industry today has come a long way? The customer services for a travel industry is much beyond ticketing. It's now moving into a comprehensive design of the entire outline and portfolio of the travel, part from end to end. So in any case, travel, boarding, lodging, entertainment, and all that stuff was always there. Now it is going way beyond. It is moving into how the customer experience can be so much more automated. I'll give you a very good example. Just give me a sec, guys. Okay, sorry. I'll give you a very wonderful example. In a recent time, I came across a cruise company, right? So you know these cruise liners which offer cruises to the customers. They have moved into such tremendous automation. What they do is, so let's say I'm targeting Suchitra as a cruise customer. I'm the from the cruise line. What they do is they go into uh, you know social medias and all possible legal methods of solicitations of information about Suchitra, what her likes, dislikes, who are her friends, when is her anniversary, etc., etc. What they do is they configure the various sensors that they have on the cruise liner with that information. So let's say when Suchitra comes on board for a cruise for let's say 10 days, whenever she's moving around in the on the ship, these sensors will give her a very custom experience. So for example, let's say she let's say from her certain records, from let's say we get to know that she's very fond of talking to few friends with whom she's greatly in touch with. I can get in that out from the social media. For example, if he or she is using Facebook, right, I get to know that there are five principal people who are constant part and parcel of her life, right, because they are very good friends or cousins or partners or whoever. What happens is that the information is configured at a due course of time. Those people are updated, okay, about the various movements of Chitra on the cruise line, how she's enjoying it. So the cruise liner touches Italy and then she has a great time in Milan, and all those pictures, etc., all those updates, not the pictures, of course, that's private, but all those updates are captured, summarized, and given to Suchitra so that when she says it's okay, it can be sent, to the various profile on the social medias that she has, so that she doesn't have to bother updating all her detailed movements, etc., in a very, very nice language, for example. So these kind of packages are created, provided to the customer, so that and that is a lot done through sensors. She doesn't have to log in, etc., etc. All those things via the great combination of sensors and GPS and internets, etc., and certain devices. These are equipped on the cruise liner. So imagine having a great time, but besides that, being in touch with your people, besides that, knowing that this cruise liner knows everything custom about you, so that whatever you want to eat, drink, whatever you want to have a recreation, whatever you want to do, all that is already pre-configured into your itinerary on that cruise liner. I mean, needless to say, guys, this will be like a dramatic improvement, right? And some of the cruise companies are now doing it. So this is what we called customer focus. What is that? It's part of strategic level planning. which I want to do because I want to see myself as a much more successful cruise liner. And for that, what do? I will do something like this. Yeah. So while I will say, okay, now I have made this plan, I'm going to treat my customers like that. Now comes the next part, how I will do that. And that for how part, I will shift these things into the tactical part. And then for a ground level day to day working, which I need to do in order to analyze the customers, plan their itineraries, and how to display it, how to touch base these new things with them when they are on board cruise. That is something which I will segregate into different components, activities, tasks over a project, which is nothing but my configuration project, because I'll make it go live in 1 year, and 1 year hence whatever customers I will solicit on my cruise liner will be totally dealt with in this manner, the way I explained my vision to you. Yeah, so 1 year is a project timeline, and then during that project the job design, task structures, quality standards is something which I will determining from operational level tasks and plannings, and that's how I will achieve my overall strategic part. Yeah. So in strategic models, we obviously have a strategic, tactical, and operational level planning, because in order to achieve the strategic part of the story, I do need to rely on my tactical and operational methods, plannings, detailings, because that's the actionable part. Okay. Okay. Another example from strategic modeling, guys, it's basically on the impact models. So the example is that of a global equity market business by any client, for example, any of the financial clients or instruments. Yeah. So there is three things to it: costs, benefits, and the risks. So while they are designing some kind of a new business from an equity for exploring the opportunities in equity market, what they see as a business benefit is that obviously it'll be probably a good business, and hence they will increase its profitability, which is the bottom line. Okay. Through this instrument they will touch base with a wider customer base, because today this client or this company doesn't do equity business. Okay. So from tomorrow they will start doing equity business. Okay. So they will get in touch with the span of the customer base will increase. In terms of costs, well, if I have to augment my business segment this way, I need new staff, I need an upgraded infrastructure, I need to plan who will be the responsible for sales, customer relationships, I need to have their travelings and all that so typically building a cost structure. What are my risks? Well, this whole launch may fail, because if I'm not able to do a careful analysis about it, there might be so many people who might be offering the same thing to the customer at a lesser cost base. Yeah. Second thing is, I might launch well, but over a stabilization timeline, I may take much more than what I've already planned in my project plan about the stabilization. I'll need to stabilize this business. I may not be able to overcome the operational glitches which are there, for example, in order to stabilize this part, this kind of a business, in terms of solicitation of right customers, sustaining them, maintaining their interest, churning the equity market understanding so well so that you can give a due return, to the customer over a period of time, etc., etc. So again, what am I doing? I'm showcasing you a simple example where, so this is very simple example where you as an enterprise analyst will do what is there on the slide. You will assess the cost, you will assess the benefits, you will assess the risks. And this is typically a non-IT kind of a project. Yeah. So the finance people sitting amongst this group, this is the likely destination for you. And this is what I've seen for, whatever business analysts that have churned out of our batches earlier. So typically today you might be doing, let's say, a back-end processing for equity transactions which happen in your organizations. But because your process understanding is clear, tomorrow you can articulate your expertise in terms of doing what is there on the slide. So you will need the expertise which you have even today, but tomorrow it'll, because you are now familiar with the certain methodology aspects of change management, and within that business analysis, and within that enterprise analysis, this becomes a viable career for you. Okay. All right, let's look at some tools which we use in your business analysis. So guys, now we are back to business analysis. Typically the business analysis which you need to do within a larger enterprise analysis. So I gave you the concept of enterprise analysis. So you know what kind of activities happen there, what kind of a vision you have when you do an enterprise analysis. See, all that is important because you are going to be interacting with the stakeholders who will be looking at you as an enterprise architect. So for that, you need to articulate what you probably understood, which is fine. But now let's get down to more operational part. Operational part is again from business analysis. There are certain, so there are multiple things, guys. I mean, this is probably in this session, and tomorrow maybe we'll do this, but there are like a lot of a lot of other things which are coming up as well. Okay, so these are the 11 principally generic tools which we have been using. They work every time. They have their relevance in every business analysis that which you will do. So I will take you to the generics first. I will take you to specifics, in upcoming sessions. Okay, these are the names: CAT4, swim lane, organizational diagrams, scenario analysis, SWOT analysis, use case diagrams, interviewings, mind maps, cost benefit, etc. Various tools which you use in business analysis. Now, which also means, guys, that you might be using multiple tools on this slide for doing a more comprehensive business analysis. Okay. Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay. So these are simple, brief descriptions of each. Once you are familiar with that, we'll get into the advanced techniques. Okay. You understand as is and to be. This itself is a modeling tool, because you produce the analysis from the as is current state. You produce what is the that is the incomplete part in the as is state. You notice what is the vulnerable part or the weaker part on the non-optimized part on the as is state, which again could be people, which could be process, which could be technology, which could be vision, which could be anything, right? You need to identify that gap because you need to fulfill that during the gap analysis. Yeah. So here you see, so many times what happens is, guys, you go to the client and you say, hey, do you have as is, how do you want me to understand your as is state? Mostly mature client will say, we have detailed models, we have detailed process flows that relates to organization, that relates to our strategy, that relates to our processes, okay, that relates to our data. So please, we will give you access to that thing. You please look through all of that exhaustively, come back to us for certain queries. So that is one way, guys, in which the clients acquaint you with their as is state. So acquaintance for as is a must of, and I'm talking about from a business analysis perspective. Business analyst needs to be thoroughly acquainted with the as is part. This is a mandatory requirement. Unless you do that, you will never probably get a clear understanding about the what you need to do for them. And to be state is, of course, once you have covered the analysis part, you have covered all change areas, you have covered their relationship to other areas, right? You are able to fulfill the gaps, and hence now your models are more complete. So in the as is modelings, when you saw the as is process flows, you realized very quickly that those process models are not complete. Not from just a paper point of view, not just from a diagram point of view, from the actual practice as well. Because that's the comprehensive understanding you take in there from a business process flow. So when you see its incompletedness, that's a clear area of opportunity for you to improve. Okay, so you discuss those gaps, you discuss those incompletedness of the process which they do as of today. There are loose ends to a process. Maybe those loose ends leads to customer dissatisfaction. It's also known. Okay, and hence you leverage on that to come back to the process to see that where it loses trail, it goes into a cold, right? And that is what is impacting the business cycle. So you complete those models, you formalize those analysis, okay, and then you extend the as is process flows and current state, by fulfilling it with the solutions for the gaps that you notice, and that becomes your to be state. Okay, so models extend solution vision from as is to be. Okay, they help you to do that. That is the strong part of as is and to be modeling as a tool. okay, for business analysis, because eventually that's a long and short story of a business analysis, right? So this tool is applicable very much in most of the places where you want to first apply some generic tools to get a clear understanding. Okay, you will eventually, of course, you will apply some specific techniques later, but to get a firm hand or understanding on the as is part, you typically do as is to be modeling. Okay, and so quickly, guys, on the slide, this cares for the process, business rules, data, systems, everything. Okay, BA elicits and the requirements for the proposed system solution. That's called gap analysis, and then you analyze the documentation of as is, and then create the to be's at multiple stages of the business analysis process. Okay, that's the as is and to be. Okay, continuing with the same tool. Okay, in the as is, you frame the business problem, you determine the root cause for that, and you provide a baseline against which the improvements can be measured. So when you say, okay, today the customer satisfaction index in your company is 3 out of 5, that is the as is state. You will provide them a basic baseline on which they can measure themselves when they reach the to be part. So what do? You check that product categories, you check the history of the customer satisfaction which has come from any of the different players. Okay, what have been their practices, etc. You draw a median, okay, of the customer satisfaction ratings for that particular scenarios, and you use that as a benchmark. And of course benchmarks can change in the to be state, you may exceed them, which is fine, but the fact is, in as is, while you do analysis, you determine the root cause of today's uh, incomplete way of doing business, okay, and then you provide a baseline for them. And in the to be state, guys, you have to first define the solution vision. Second, you have to obviously create and carve out, actually not create, more of carve out the scope. Then you model the future state. Then you define the solution requirements. So what is on the right hand side is obviously what probably is coming up for you to understand better later. But again, from a technique or a tool perspective, so guys, tool is not just a tool what you run on the system, right? That is more of an IT tool. Here I'm talking purely from business perspective, and I would like to talk more on the business perspective because you are eventually a business analyst. So you need some tools which you can run on the IT systems, and you can find out a lot, right? But that is typically more from a technology and a technical aspect. We have to be a very good business analyst first before we say that we are business analysts who can also comprehensively find out how we can, state the requirements from on the technology side as well. Okay, so I hope you understand, because we need to be more on the business side, guys, because that's where the larger future part of the story goes. Yeah. Okay, so guys, I think we have a couple of minutes remaining, so I think if any questions that you have, yeah, otherwise I think we will probably finish this 2 hour cycle for today only. Yeah, and then you can go ahead and have a nice evening before we meet back tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. So guys, just to have a clear common understanding with you, what you are doing right now is the again a basics build up. Okay, it will move into, of course, further maybe assignments, case studies, or whatever, but your basics are getting clarified, right? I just want to ask you one question today. Are your basics in control? Are your basics in order? And if the answer is yes, I would like you to do a self study as well. Yeah. Okay, and one more thing I want to ask you. I had taken an action point upon myself last week, and I did write to the Ematicus administrators to give you the access to the folder where all the SAP videos are uploaded for the different SAP processes and ERP understandings, etc. Did you get that link, guys? Oh, really? Okay, never mind. I'm at on introduction was there. Okay, no worries. I'm sitting in Imarticus office today, so what I can do is I can just walk up to the administrators, and I'll just kind of quickly cross check with them, and then they will assign you the link. Okay, so start going through that, and guys, please do some add-on reading to business analysis as well. So from business analysis perspective, you might typically have Babok, which offers you a wonderful comprehensive understanding of a lot of topics on business analysis. So may I request you to do a side reading as well for whatever little time that you get, so that we can have a more better sessions, more better orientations during our discussions. Yeah. Okay, so Savan says that I went through the quizzes and I couldn't see the answers. Okay, Savan, I'll just check with them because I think they have the answers stored somewhere. Typically, I think, okay, let me check with them because obviously we give you the responses to the quizzes as well. Otherwise, how will you cross check yourself? Okay, so two things on me: get you the access to the folder which has all SAP videos. Second, see that where are the answers upload for the quizzes, because there are multiple quizzes on business analysis. There are multiple quizzes on agile part. There is a quiz for every topic, in fact, in BA, in agile, in project management. So I think you need to do them simultaneously along with. Okay, two action items only. I'll get back to you on this. I mean, the administrators will assign you the needful. Yeah. Okay, guys. So I think today we are good. So I hope you enjoyed the session. Yeah, and so let's hear each other on tomorrow then, 3 o'clock sharp. Yep. Okay, guys. All right. Good. All right. Thank you for everything today. Yeah. Okay. Bye, guys. Bye for now. Bye.